In the heart of the state-of-the-art, at the dawn of the next stage in entertainment, you found no proscenium.
You have indeed found no proscenium, the voice of everything immersive. I'm your host, Noah Nelson, and welcome to episode 386. This week on the show, we're joined by three of my favorite people to gab about immersive theater, particularly LA's immersive theater and that would be Graham Wetterhahn, Sara Beil, and KJ Knies of After Hours Theater Company. Now, if that name seems familiar, it's probably for one of several reasons. Could be because of the production of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which was the talk of the town here a few years ago, where they created a spectacular immersive pre-show to the venerable play based on Ken Kesey's novel. And they're back to form this year with a co-production of The Tempest with Los Angeles Shakespeare Center, where both production companies are bringing their A-game for a hybrid production that has become a critical darling here in the Southland and has all kinds of folks showing up to check out the scene. Now, a quick disclosure reminder, we've partnered with After Hours a couple of times now, helping them with the Los Angeles Immersive Invitational, the 72-hour film fest style event that we are proud to work with them on. This is a fun episode recorded on stage at the Shakespeare Center of Los Angeles, where The Tempest and Immersive Experience is running through April 16th. Now, before we get into it, a few quick notes. First, this week saw some very big additions to the lineup at the Next Stage Immersive Summit coming up this June 2nd through 4th in Los Angeles. That starts with our first spotlight speaker, Wendy McClellan-Anderson, the Director of IP Management at Riot Games. Riot are the creators of the global game phenomenon League of Legends. It's a massively multiplayer online arena that has become a genre-defining esport, and also its groundbreaking animated series spin-off Arcane, which had its own immersive experience in the form of an event produced with Secret Cinema here in LA in 2021 that electrified gamers and immersive enthusiasts alike. Riot Games is one of the biggest game companies in the world, and their adoption of immersive as a format is one of the most exciting things to happen in the field this decade, and they're going to be here with us at the next stage. But that's not all. We've got Thomas Pintal of Moment Factory joining us to give us insight into how the award-winning production company creates large-scale immersive attractions on multiple continents. Many of you might remember Thomas from the episode we did about Astra Lumina, the Nightwalk Moment Factory produced here in LA that delighted so many of you. And then something you probably didn't see coming. Dr. Crystal Bob Semple, the CEO of Plato Learning, whose Percy Jackson Chronicles-inspired summer camps have leveraged immersive storytelling to redefine just what learning at summer camp can be. This is one we chased because there are parents in the immersive community who just talk a lot about these summer camps, and we said, hey, I think this might be one to go for. We are really ecstatic about all three of these guests who are going to help us see the full power and potential of the immersive arts, and I suspect will inspire new horizons for more than a few of our badge holders. Badges are on sale now, and there's never been a better time to lock down your spot because we are just 2 months out, just 2 months left to go, and there are more announcements coming. So grab them while they are hot. Meanwhile, we've been quite busy on the site here this week with a new review rundown, a review of Desert X 2023 by arts editor Laura Hess, and the return of the Immersive 5 with live-action attractions and Imagi-Ne'er-Do-Wells' Brett Jackson. Speaking of Imagi-Ne'er-Do-Wells, the next edition of the Kooky Concepts Club for Creators of Experience here in LA will feature a guest judge we all know well. Me. Sunday, April 23rd at 2-Bit Circus, I'll be the guest judge, while Jenn Wong of 40 Watts from Nowhere, Call of Duty, and Disney's XD's Yokai Watch is the master of merriment for the event that is the closest thing you can get to a mad scientist convention in this corner of the multiverse. Finally, the Patreon campaign hit our big goal last week, keeping the newsletter open for all, but that doesn't mean we stop growing. This week, we welcome Terry Podgorski and Carmen Osor to the roles of our backers, all of whom are keeping a roof over my head and gas in my tank. Literally. Our next big campaign push will start after the Next Stage Summit, but for now, remember, as little as $2 a month at patreon.com/NoProscenium not only powers the podcast and websites for NoPro and everything immersive, it also gets you into our member-only Discord. If you're already a backer, drop a review on iTunes or your podcatcher of choice and share the articles you find useful on your social media platform of choice. It helps immensely. We are always No Proscenium, except on Insta, where we are no_Proscenium. As always, big thanks to our sustaining backers, Samuel Mustry, Chris Woolman, Samantha Davison, Eric Shamlin, Elaine, Daryl, John Boulette, Jay Bushman, Jerome Joseph Gentis, Tom Leonetti McGuire, Wynn Thorne, Ryan, David Bassick, Richard Ayers, Lonnie Hands-On, Lecker the Cool, the Ministry of Peculiarities, and Jan Budman. Thank you all. We're also on the lookout for community partners who are up for working out special deals for our backers. Hit me up at noah@noproscenium.com for details. We're here to help you. We are here at the Shakespeare Center of Los Angeles. We're sitting on the stage. Well, actually, inside. We're inside a tree.
Ariel's Hollow.
Ariel's Hollow.
This was her prison for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
A kind of hollowed out, net tree action thing. A couple of voices you just heard. To my right is
Graham Wetterhahn. Hi.
Who is the...
Hi, I'm Graham Wetterhahn. I'm the artistic director of After Hours Theater Company.
And the other voice you heard...
This is Sara Beil, and then I am an immersive designer and producer with After Hours.
And next to her, whose voice you haven't heard yet is...
Hey, this is KJ. I'm a producer with After Hours.
KJ what?
KJ Knies. KJ Knies, and I am a producer with After Hours and also help out with the marketing and all external communications.
Including Justin Timberlake knowledge.
Yes.
And official Justin Timberlake consultant.
Yeah, if you need information on JT and JB, you go to KJ. That is how it goes. And that all makes sense at the end, very, very end of the show. Now we're
I certainly hope so.
Now we're committed. We got to do the bit. Of course, some of you may know, I'll probably do this in the cold open disclosure, right? Like, this is not the first time all three of us have been in this building together.
No.
Because we did the Invitational here last year. But we're here now inside Ariel's Hollow because we're on the set of the Tempest Immersive Experience, which is a co-production between y'all and the Shakespeare Center of Los Angeles. And it's been getting some good buzz. LA Times, thumbs up, or little man clapping, or whatever Charles McNulty does. I don't know. Oh wow! I don't read normal theater reviews, so I'll read it later.
He was very kind.
I heard
nice. He was kind in the interview and kind in person for whatever it's worth.
Yeah, no, I heard he liked it. So and not something that happens so much in the mainstream with
certainly
with immersive.
Certainly not.
The way it's covered here in LA. But what is the immersive part of this? Like, how would you guys describe this show? This, like, the basic, and then we'll get into the philosophy and some of the details. And I got to see it the other night, so I got some specific questions.
I feel like we best describe our usual experiences as like an immersive traditional theater hybrid.
Yeah.
We really try to kind of both bring traditional audiences into a more immersive centric experience and vice versa. So we kind of use our immersive elements in this show specifically as kind of an immersive onboarding experience, with the goal to kind of make Shakespeare accessible, where most of our audiences have never seen Shakespeare before. I would venture to say, like, even more than half of our audiences have probably never been in the theater, and so we kind of use the interactive elements as a way to introduce you to the characters, the themes, and the overall story of the show before watching it.
Yes, so this partnership came about. The artistic director of Shakespeare Center, Ben Dunnenberg, and I helped them produce a benefit about a year ago with Al Pacino, which was a different story for a different day. Very cool experience. And Ben has really, his company's been around for about 30 years, and he's always been open to experimentation. And he told me one day, he said, Graham, I really want Shakespeare Center of LA to be a place for intimate, immersive encounters with the classics. And my ears perked up at that, because here's a company that's been around for 30 years with a lot of resources, a lot of powerful people on their board wanting to spend their resources on something different. And so he and I went out to, he took my partner Michaela and I out to dinner, and we started very casually coming up with, just sort of chatting about this prospect of working together. And he said, well, what even makes a good immersive piece? And I said, well, usually one of the easiest, one of the clearest ways to do an immersive piece is something that takes place in a few locations and in real time. And Michaela said, well, Tempest meets both of that. You have the boat and you have the island, and it takes place all in about 3 hours. And we all kind of looked at each other and said, that's a great idea. And that night we started working on it. Awesome.
The unities sometimes come in handy. The old theatrical unities, like everything in the virtual amount of time that it would be, which became, I think, at a certain point post Shakespeare, almost like an obsession in the theater. Was that like, it must be happening in real time. It must be happening in these locations. You see a lot of that in a lot of a fair amount that happens like in Moliere and Voltaire and everything, moving over to France. I just activated my theater history classes. Just randomly. I'm also going to point out we're sitting on the stage. I'm like a little bit hunched over because my earpiece is too short. So I'm going to wind up saying weirder and weirder stuff because I'm like contorted in a way I normally aren't. I'm the one who chose to sit
like
on
very
the floor.
Gollum of you.
Yeah. We're in a little hutsies talking about the Shakespeare's. Here's. Sorry. So you zeroed in on Tempest, and this is not the first time y'all have played in sort of this kind of sandbox, right? Like in terms of like what Sara was talking about, like the setup, sort of an immersive setup and then a punchline traditional show.
Yeah, this is very much the spiritual successor of our 2018's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest that we did. I think the original goal, because Shakespeare obviously is public domain, you can mess with it more. I think that was something that we were really hoping to get a dive into. I think that was something.
They're really restrictive with Cuckoo's Nest?
Yes, because you have to get the rights from that was Samuel French, now Concord Theatricals. Yeah, so that was a licensed show.
Right.
We changed 2 words in there, and we didn't tell them that we changed 2 words, but it was just for logistics. We had one situation where there's a scene that said, who would like to start? Long pause, Billy talks, if you're familiar with Cuckoo's Nest. But anytime in an immersive show you said, who would like to start? Long pause, a random audience member would tell a story. So we had to change it to Billy, why don't you start? And then there was one number where she counted the number of hands in a vote, and we just said, estimate however many hands are written, instead of saying 6 when there was 100 people in the room.
And that all involved a heavy negotiation in order to...
They were okay with those 2 changes, but no, any contemporary script that's licensed you can't really mess with. Yeah, no,
I mean, I know that's like standard practice. Is just like, I also sit there thinking like, it's Ken Kesey, for the love of God, it's Merry Pranksters. It comes out of a very different cultural tradition, and the fact that it's shackled to the huge is maybe a little sad. So.
Yeah, I don't think the Kesey estate would be the ones who have an issue with that.
No, well, that's my point, right?
Yeah.
It's like author intent, notwithstanding, I suppose you'd say. Very different if you were trying to do Beckett. It'd be like, oh, nope, just don't even try. So y'all did that, and this is sort of your first return to this type of format. So, Sara, maybe you could talk because you're lead designer here on this. What did you take away from the Cuckoo's Nest experience and bring here? Like what is sort of the flow? Because for Cuckoo's Nest, there was sort of a vibe of it wasn't just like pre-show. It was sort of like it covered some of the beats of the show. Like from a technical standpoint, like in Shakespeare, you'd call it like a dumb show, right?
Yeah.
Like we went through the beats of the story, interactively, and then we got the show. It's the play within the play type vibe. This is not that. So maybe both. Why is this not that? And was it? Yeah, why is this not that?
Yeah, I mean, I think every show you can't just kind of copy and paste from show to show. You have to tailor it around to what's the needs of the show and like kind of what are our tools to work with. And that comes down to like spaces, settings, what is the role of the audience member, and where does the show start and how can we play off of that? And so I think with this show, the first thing that we decided was that you should enter onto the ship and you should get shipwrecked onto the island with the rest of the crew. That just kind of made sense. It just it kind of instantly clicked in that way. And we wanted to kind of do that as the onboarding experience, whereas in Cuckoo's Nest, we had you put on gowns and
you were checked in as a patient in the hospital.
Yeah, and with Cuckoo's Nest, we were able to draw a lot from the book as the original source material. With Shakespeare, it was a little different because we were just drawing from The Tempest. And the audience role in The Tempest became shipwrecked sailors. So I just feel like the sandbox that we had to play with, it didn't construe itself exactly to doing the same dumb show as we had with Cuckoo's Nest.
There's also
whereas in Cuckoo's Nest we were able to play with all of the characters and really build upon the backstory of Ruckley we took directly from the book. Whereas we weren't able to do that with this show. And I think it became, what story do we tell in the pre-show? And then it became the island, the story of the island. And using our set pieces, because we were constrained by the amount of actors that we could use, we really had to make our set work. Yeah, so that's why it's different.
A couple of things limiting factors that are less fun from a design perspective, but are important production considerations. Number one, Cuckoo's Nest was not a equity union show, and this is an actors equity union show. So there are limitations to what we could do with actors. This is also a co-production between two companies, and so everything was a negotiation, and we have, we're having to. Our director, Ben Dunnenberg, who's the head of Shakespeare Center, this is his first time working in this format. And so everything was a conversation and negotiation and educational moment. And so there was, I'm hedging. There was definitely controversy on the team. There's definitely things that we in the pure after hours version of the show that we would have done that because we're co-producing we can't do, and they are funding this project, which is amazing that they're putting their money towards an immersive piece, but it definitely
it's also their audience, right? And so there's a bit of introducing, there's actually there's three audiences here, right? There's the built-in Shakespeare Center audience, there's y'all's audience, and then there's because the
Fever crowd
and the Fever crowd, because the tickets are on Fever, and Fever, I think Graham even said they bring the events crowd, right? The folks who are oh, I did, I went and got 5 drinks inside an intimate candlelight, cathedral thing. What is this? And they're coming in not necessarily knowing what they're going to get, right?
Yeah, so we kind of had to, we always design our experiences, we say, for 3 levels of people: waiters, swimmers, and divers, which comes from the theme park kind of way of designing them for things. And so, yeah, that was our first consideration into creating this. And I think that was also a lessons learned from Cuckoo's Nest, where people really loved the pre-show. There were some people that loved the show, hated the show itself. But there are some people that really hated it too, because there were people that were coming for the just kind of, they wanted to take a seat and not interact with actors, and they hated being bombarded by our actors. And so I think this, at least, it's a little bit more self-driven. So you have actor interaction in the ship experience, but once you're on the island, if you don't want to talk to an actor, you do not have to at all. Yeah. So it's a little bit more self-exploratory. And then one change that we made from Cuckoo's Nest to this one was the time slots. So that if you really didn't want any of the bigger immersive interactive parts, you could essentially kind of skip it and go straight to your seat.
But you still have to do
You still have to do the
everyone does
ship.
the ship, right?
Yeah, but the ship also, like, you can easily, we have seats in there. You can take a seat and you can just kind of be a gazer, a watcher, rather than partaking if you really want to.
Well, one of the nice things about the ship is that, it is the show.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's like
Yeah.
there's a little bit of run up and then you hit the text and it's a fully functional scene, and it's like it's an immersive staging of that scene in a real way. And then I imagine, because I got to be part of like a first group going through, I imagine for the folks who are, in the last group, it's like, all right, you get that, and then you walk through the tunnel, and then time to take your seat. Like no time for shenanigans, running around, tapping NFC. I almost said NFT. Sorry. NFT, NFC. One's cool, one's not. Guess which one's cool. Tapping NFC markers and kind of leading all up to a little Easter egg, as it were. Like it's an Easter egg hunt that you've got going on here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was the question?
I don't know the question. That was me recapping. I mean, it's sort of like, it is interesting because like it does come down to like designing for those different audiences,
I think it's
right?
so, whereas a lot of people, when they design an immersive show, you design for an immersive crowd.
Right.
And the thing is, like, we're not designing blackout. Like, we're not putting a paper bag over your head and then taking you to a room and, interrogating you for an hour. It's much less intensive than that, but it's designed to be that way. It's designed to kind of like be a medium ground and interstitial between both worlds. And you can't really, it's as much as you want to put into it is what you get out of it.
So on that note, I mean, because you have all these different types of people coming through, what's been the reaction so far? Like, are you getting surprised by who amongst the audience members are digging in, or is there patterns of any kind?
I get to be I'm typically one of the house staff crew on the ship. And I usually work the sail, and so I've been kind of.
That's one of the things about Graham as a producer. Like he's in there in the scrum. He was literally like the second person I saw, when I came in the other night, and he was working. I thought he was subbing for somebody, but no, that's what you do every night.
I feel like we're always one person short staffed, so I guess technically I am.
Well,
but
these days, I mean, that's just the normal.
But I like being on site and being part of the show. Right now,
As we speak, Graham is wearing a beret
I know.
from our show.
Yeah, he's partially in costume.
But like, no, for example, today's matinee, which is once again, it's really funny because you'll have like your old traditional matinee audience, and then like women in like clubbing gear and like stiletto heels for a 2:00 matinee of the Tempest, which is I love. But I'm always surprised by who I can get to play. And today, for example, we had. There was the oldest, slowest, least mobile, most likely to be traditional theater fans in the room, who I thought were I was like, oh, they're gonna hate all of this. Were the first people to jump on the sail. We're pointing out all of the cool things when like the smoke was coming out from below deck. And I talked to them a few times throughout the show, and they were some of the biggest fans, I think, of the show, and gave us a standing ovation today. We're the first people standing up. So what I think I'm noticing with this, and what has changed since Cuckoo's Nest, is I think the concepts of non-traditional staging, immersive, more interactive styles of theater are catching on in a more mainstream way, because I feel like the more traditional theater audiences are embracing this to a degree that I didn't necessarily expect. We've had very little pushback from the traditional theater community for this piece. I
mean, part of the luck there is like you label it right up top that this is going to be immersive, so like people.
We did for Cuckoo's Nest too, though.
Yeah, but also maybe it's kind of like changed, how people think of it. But it's funny because like you guys are doing this right now, and then like Boston Lyric Opera's doing a piece called Bluebeard's Castle 4 Songs, and the director of that is Anne Bogart, who's like a legendary American director. Was like one of the co-founders of Suzuki's theater company here in the United States. And you have someone like that who, is in the the late mastery stage of their career, playing around with immersive elements, like experimenting for their audiences. And you have, a company that's been here for 30 years starting to play around and experiment. It does feel like we're in a different era, and I don't know like if it's made more possible by the pandemic we just went through, and like people want something different, or just
I feel like that it
Yeah.
could be partially due to that. Like people are looking for experiences. They want to get out of their house more than ever. I
Yeah.
feel like.
and also just the need for like not just like just have a content thrown at you, because we've got an unlimited supply of content.
Yeah, it's the connection. I think this hybrid style, what I've always, prior to doing more immersive styles of work, I did intimate theater, and I loved intimate theater because even more so than in a large scale proscenium house, there's that direct energy exchange between audience and performance. I think that's probably, in my opinion, why a lot of us are drawn to immersive, because the energy exchange between audience and performer is just absolutely put on steroids in an immersive. But I think perhaps some of the traditional theater audiences are starting to get that feeling as well.
Yeah, I think we're always surprised by like who gets really into it too, because like it's always really my favorite part of coming to the show is getting to watch people walk around the stage and explore everything. And I would say the vast majority gets out of their seats and is exploring.
And I also see them helping each other solve the puzzles too,
Yeah.
which is something I really
It's
like.
really
Groups
fun.
that didn't come together are all sitting there and helping each other work and solve the island.
It's definitely a way to get to know your fellow audience members.
Yeah, I was sort of surprised at like how many people were like all in Caliban's cave together.
Right.
There's also something fun about, if you know a good number of people who come to a Shakespeare piece, like they've seen it before, they've read it in school, like they know it, and Tempest is one of the ones that's more popular, right? Like and there's so many speeches that are just like kind of exist in the ether of the culture. And to watch people get to like explore like, oh, it's Caliban's cave, like I know where this is, or like, oh look, there's Prospero's book, those little bits, even if it's something that you aren't fully conscious of when you're going in, like there's something batting around the back of your head going like, oh, this feels familiar, and you get to watch it be embodied in a way that you don't normally get to.
Yeah, I think there's something for people that have seen The Tempest a million times, because they get to experience it in a completely different way, and they do get to have those interactions prior to the show to be like seeing a celebrity, in person a little bit, reincarnated, versus people that have never seen The Tempest and have no idea what it's about, are able to learn prior to the show kind of what the characters are and what story we're getting into.
And sorry, no.
Oh no, please.
Well, no, I think that's one of the really nice things about this co-production, because Ben, the artistic director of Shakespeare Center, has dedicated, the last 40 years of his life to Shakespeare and Shakespeare's text and performance of Shakespeare's text. I personally never worked on a Shakespeare piece, so I think being able to come at it and say, a lot of the times when I see Shakespeare, the first act, there's 4 people who have A first names, and I'm trying to I'm trying to read the synopsis in my program to catch up. And so we sort of approached it like, what would we need as an audience member, in order to be able to jump right into the show without missing a beat and really get engaged from the get-go? And so I think that is a large factor in the design, is trying to help, almost sort of give a study guide to the audience of what they're going to, beyond the fun of experiencing these worlds, really help them understand the characters' relationships, objectives, where we are at the beginning of the show. And we also do student matinees, and we've done it for both middle schoolers and high schoolers. And if I was in 6th grade and going to see Shakespeare, I don't know how engaged I would be, but these kids are really, really engaged. And so I think that's a testament to Sara's design.
When you were thinking about how many people you had to pulse through, and that you were doing it in shifts, how did that influence your design and sort of this sort of Stations of the Cross action?
Yeah, that influenced a lot of the design. I think so. Well, we first got the what is the area that we have in the lobby? Like, how many people at a time can we put in the lobby? And I think then we had to hit a certain audience count to hit our ticket goal, which was about 160, 170. So then we decided to have the 3 time slots with about 50 to 60 people per time slot. But then once you're on the island, we have to accommodate, up to 160 people running around. So we weren't able to do a linear puzzle, which is kind of what we did with Cuckoo's Nest. It was here's your starting point, and then there's your ending point, and you have dots along the way, but you're going in a straight line. Whereas this show was designed so it's more of a non-linear puzzle. So you have you can start pretty much anywhere on the set, and you're you're gathering these symbols, and then you kind of put them together, and then you take it to the end. But it was designed in such a way that you could start anywhere, and kind of be onboarded anywhere, and it's not A to B to C, but you can kind of do it in multiple orders to prevent bottlenecking, hopefully.
and each station has a different kind of puzzle, and you have to transform elements of the puzzle in order to add up the whole piece. And I thought that was particularly interesting, given the nature of Prosper's art, that magic is about transformation, and this idea of like taking the disparate pieces, putting them all together, but then also taking them the next step further, and I won't give away what the button is, but there's spectacle parts of the button, but there's a participatory part of the button that kind of loops back into narrative, and I thought that was a really nice grace note in terms of tying it all together and kind of making it feel like you have a complete unit of story that if you complete with enough spare time, you can feel good about and then go get a cocktail.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was the goal, that it would take about like 20 to 30 minutes to complete, so that if you come in the 7 o'clock or 7:20 time slots, you should have enough time to finish it. Whereas our 7:40 time slot, you'd maybe have enough time to finish one of the puzzles and get a cocktail.
But then also people can still kind of muck around during intermission. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a choice too, to keep it open during intermission, because a lot of people finish like right before we're about to start the show. So we don't want them to walk away with a sour taste in their mouth. So we kept it open during intermission, which is something we didn't do during Cuckoo's Nest, but for I think a very obvious reason.
Oh yeah.
Which is it didn't make sense. But yeah, I mean, I think all the puzzles, they do have a lot of like thinking behind, like narrative thinking behind it. Really, it came down to, well, the show is all about Prospero. Like, he's the big guy once the show starts. But I think as After Hours, the stories that we were really interested in telling were everyone who grew up on the island and the kind of like what their perspectives on what was going on was, and what was their perspective on Prospero. So that's what kind of influenced the three different weenies that we've been calling them, or structures, which is Miranda Sandbox, Caliban's Cave, and Ariel's Hollow. So we really wanted to use the pre-show as time to tell those character stories and kind of like their relationship to each other and to Prospero, and being kind of like the only quote unquote natives of the island, whereas Prospero is not a native.
One of the things with the Tempest that I know was very important to a lot of us working on the show is the Tempest. Without getting too political about it, I think it's safe to say that Tempest does have a lot of commentary on colonialism, even dating back to Shakespeare's time, and the show often puts Prospero in the hero role as he's trying to get revenge on the people who usurped him, but in the process, Prospero oppresses Caliban, Ariel, and Miranda as well in different ways, and so I think telling the story of the people that, while the show really focuses on Prospero's sort of redemption arc, I think we really wanted to draw attention to these characters that were sort of
had their power taken by
Prospero.
Yeah,
and injustice is done to him, and then he kind of like pays the favor back by doing injustice to others.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot is out of balance on the island as a whole.
Yeah.
And to the actor's credit, because I know we haven't even talked, I think our Prospero, Chris Butler, does a really remarkable job of portraying Prospero with those shades of gray.
Yeah. No, I mean, the production, I mean, we're not going to touch on like the core of the production itself so much, because we don't have the director of like that part of it in the mix today. But I did find it interesting that like the all of it sort of did manage to harmonize really well in terms of what you had in the pre-show, what you had in terms of the built environment. This idea of the immersive as an the immersive narrative elements as an extension of the built environment, and the built environment informing, literally the stage upon which the story takes place. And like, as people look for what is the formula of the intersection between traditional theater and very, active, intimate, fully experiential immersive, this feels like, and not in a bad way, the path of least resistance, but that doesn't mean there isn't a lot that can be done with it. that's more of a comment than a question.
No. I mean, I
Yeah, no,
think
Jonathan
that's
got it.
I think that's essentially our thesis
Yeah.
statement here is how do we make immersive theater palatable for traditional theater audiences or audiences not
Well, I
used
think
to it,
it
and
goes
vice
beyond
versa.
palatable. It goes beyond palatable,
Yeah.
though, right? It's like it's possible to make it just palatable, right?
How do we
check a box.
create an engaging experience
Yeah.
without overwhelming audiences that are first timers?
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that we're really interested in is taking theater and making it an event. Like, it's a night out. It's a full experience that you're going to. It's not just you're not just going to come to this theater and sit in a seat and watch a stodgy show. It's like a whole experience.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it shouldn't feel like a chore. I mean, and one
Yeah.
thing classic in LA is like, my friend's in a show. Do you want to go? What kind of friend is this? Like, how important is this friend to you that you want to drag me along to the thing? And I'm just like, I'm pissed off a bunch of people with this. But we've all been there. You've been there. You've also done it to me. But we've all been there, right? We've all been
Oh,
on
yeah.
every part of this formula. We've all been in. And that's the thing that's kind of, I mean, it definitely was the case with Cuckoo's Nest, as the case here as well, right? Down to the cocktails. Graham, tell us about the cocktails.
Oh, sure.
The
Yeah.
cocktails are amazing.
The cocktails are, I like to say, I think these are probably the best cocktails you ever had at a theater. Our friends at Spirit Guides Cocktails, which actually started essentially as the cocktail program for Cuckoo's Nest, where they did cocktails in blood bags and syringes and things like that.
Oh, they weren't a company before then? They were just...
They had catered 2 weddings.
Oh my God!
And so they really
Wow.
started as Cuckoo's Nest was their first big thing.
What were these weddings like? Because like the Cuckoo's Nest ones were like in the blood bags and everything. Like, that was pretty wild. Were the weddings also pretty wild? I'll ask them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yes, no, they're good. They're good friends of ours, and so they've worked with us. They worked with us when we did the last 5 years where we had a cocktail pairing with the show. But yeah, the program is really excellent. They've done a lot. They have an evolving cocktail menu that changes at intermission. They have a cocktail that basically has an entire show, the Tempest Experience, Flaming Amazement Experience. There's fans and special effects,
which is very strong, as
Noah and I learned.
Yeah, by accident. You're the one who went for it. I was just content to have a little thing in a bottle.
And then we also have pre-batched cocktails in sort of flasks, which I think are kind of fun and add to the experience.
I think that's going to be a huge thing going forward for like Los Angeles. Like little, like go and get a flask at a show or a bar. Like this is just the way now. Mm-hmm. It's so good.
It is really good. And I also think one thing I just want to give them credit for is all of the cocktails tie in very intentionally and very narratively into the story. So like
yeah, it's like rum cocktails is like the heart of it, and like sailors drink rum,
But even more than that, one of the drink at intermission has sack sherry in it and Milanese spirits, and in the play they're drinking sack sherry.
Yeah,
which is
Well, and if you've never, I'm almost sad that you went. Not almost sad. Well, no, I have complicated feelings. Like, I'm glad you grabbed that one. If I had known there was a sherry sack one, I would have maybe tried to mess with it, because like sherry sack, it's something that gets drunk in Shakespeare a lot. Falstaff just downs gallons of it in the shows that Falstaff's in, and because of that, I decided like back in my 20s to develop a taste for sherry sack, which is very difficult to do because it's nasty. It is not good. It is like not a great thing. I'm sure I'm offending some people who love it, but admit it, you developed the taste for it if you had to. And I did. I managed to get to the point where I liked it. And it's just such a bold thing to like say, like, we're going to make a cocktail with sherry sack. So I'm a little sad I didn't get a chance to sample, but
Wait,
they're here tonight if you want to try before you leave.
maybe.
No,
maybe.
that's Stefano's False Idol.
Oh.
Yeah.
That comes out at intermission.
Yeah. That there's a different drink in intermission. It's a classy move. It's a classy move.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Yeah, we've tried some cool things with the cocktails this show that we're really excited about.
Well, that speaks to the whole idea of like making it a night out.
Yeah.
Right.
The cocktails are definitely they have their own design category.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's one thing that I noticed when working with Shakespeare Center. Ben and I have talked about this quite a bit. Is I think a traditional theater perspective, or not at least certain, particularly in the 70s and 80s in Peter Brook style theater, is design is really a passive part of the storytelling. Make sure the actors are seen, make sure the actors are heard. And I think inherently in immersive and in our perspective is design is a very active part and plays a very active role in storytelling. Which I just assumed was the norm, but I'm realizing is not actually the case.
mean, there's all kinds of reasons for that. I mean, that breaks down some like, huge doors. I mean, some of it's that, the tradition that Brooke was working in, was pushing back against where spectacle had gotten to be too big, or you get like, these very mechanistic productions, like just all those years of traditions of like, E. Gordon Craig, the actors are marionettes, and then you have, of course, then you get the method stuff coming through, and like the actors come to center, and then how do you do the thing, and how are you doing these like really intense productions that maybe don't have the funds to do,
Sure.
a lot of spectacle, and what's fun about immersive is because we're always out in the hinterlands, is like some things have these incredible design components, right? I mean, Punch Drunk's work is, as much as it's choreography designed, as much as it's like, throughput, driven, the design, the physical and the audio design is a huge part of that. People lose themselves for hours without ever seeing an actor in sometimes in their shows. And so we get to have this fun sandbox where dialing different parts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to like, because in my world in like themed entertainment, like we design stories without actors. I mean, we have cast members and sometimes you have walk around characters, but you're telling a story through the design elements, more than having an actor in a script. And I think we're kind of like marrying those worlds as well. It's using architecture and set dressing and props to tell a story.
And it can be tricky because, like, a really well done play, which can, empower some great performances, the performative nature of the play can really work against the experiential nature of a location, right? It's like the performance wants to be seen, it wants to demand your attention, and an experiential space wants to invite you to like poke around the corners.
You are the hero of the story. Yeah.
And those things can be, at odds with each other. So finding a way to have them both happening in the same space, if not at the same time, then in serial with each other is part of the design challenge you guys keep finding yourselves tackling.
Absolutely, and I think even more so in this show, because I think Ben really believes in he wants the audience to be able to use their imagination to build the world of the show to a certain degree, and that the audience should have an active role in helping to create what is happening for themselves. But inherently, so he was talking very minimalist and very abstract, and you can do that in immersive, but you're it's certainly not the easiest choice to make in it, when we're setting out to create an immersive piece. So trying to balance the needs of the director with our Sarah's needs of wanting to create a satisfying environmental based immersive design definitely proved to be an interesting challenge, which I think got resolved relatively well, though.
I mean, I think you guys walked the line pretty well. I mean, these things should be additive, right? Like that's one of the things when you're working with a text like The Tempest, because, it is one of, I don't want to say like the big five in Shakespeare, but it's like, it's definitely at the top of the canon in terms of what people know and their people's expectations and why you're coming to see The Tempest. It's like, you want to hear, like our dreams are rounded by a little sleep, right? Our lives are rounded by a little sleep, right? And anyway, I messed it up and then I started to do it right. But the point is,
doing great.
The point is, like you know these things and you want to see these things and you want to watch this get drawn out. And so the idea of what could be done to sort of, prep you, right? Like to fall deeper into the dream that is this show. And I would say, like, from, my little dumb person can't remember the quotes right perspective, I feel like you've done that. You managed to like get you into the groove, get you into the vibe of the show, get you into the world of the show without overwhelming you, or without that thing where, like, for some people, for some people in the Cuckoo's Nest, like the pre-show, like upstage,
it was a lot.
upstage the main show. You're just like, oh, we've kind of done it, like this. The other part was like kind of amazing. Like, we're done now, right? It's like, oh no, we're gonna see the show again, right? And here this strikes a balance between those two poles, right? Like you're walking that line of like, and some of it's the luck of of the script, or the design of the script, because the shipwreck happens, and it's such a different world than the island, right?
Yep.
It's one scene that happens, and then you're done with it, and so to have two worlds to get people through is really, really good.
Right, and I think that sort of hit the nail on the head of why The Tempest was appealing to pursue for this style of production. But I also really appreciate you saying that, because Act 1, Scene 2, which is the scene that the show really starts with, that the shipwreck is Act 1, Scene 1, but we really jump into the show in Act 1, Scene 2, is the longest scene in the play, and also one of the most exposition heavy and arguably driest. So I think we were all really concerned with, for all of these audiences, event-going audiences, people who don't normally see Shakespeare, to throw them into a 30-minute exposition-heavy scene. How are they going to respond to that? It gets, the last scene in the act is very funny, and the second act has a lot of more spectacular moments and comedic moments, but it doesn't. The first 30 minutes of the show,
it's backstory.
It's backstory.
Yeah. It's hard. It is one of the hardest jobs in all of Shakespeare. It's two actors, with one of them being like, "Oh, let me tell you the story of our lives.
Let me give you all the exposition you need."
You may
to
remember
watch the
these
show.
parts from when you were a child, and here's the stuff I was keeping from you, and like how to make that dramatic. I mean, it's a difficult challenge, straight up, and always has been. Like the show's never been. I mean, when people nail it, it's amazing, because it should not be able to be nailed, and it's kind of really fun to have this, the prologue set up, this experiential part, so that by the time you get to that scene, you've been in the world for 20 minutes to an hour. You're already in the show.
Right, and so when Ariel and Caliban come on and you see their dynamic with Prospero in that Act 1, Scene 2, you already feel like you have a connection with them, even if you haven't gotten to directly communicate with them.
Yeah, you're already vibing with it. So, we've been at this for like 40 minutes now. Anything else you want to let everyone know or shout out to everybody as they start to test the lights?
Oh, the
The
lights just came on.
Coming
Now
to the
it's all
end.
magical.
Yeah, it's really good. I'm saying like we're finishing up, and then the lights came on in the little hollow that we've been in the dark this entire time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of my final thoughts. Do you have any final thoughts?
I mean, I have a lot of fun. I think, what I think it's time for before we give our final thoughts? A JT moment with KJ.
Oh,
Oh, hey guys.
yeah. You've been silent, which I don't think of you as silent.
No, I'm not usually silent.
Yeah.
No, but this has really been about the immersive. Yeah.
Yeah. But
I have a louder voice, so I don't want to blow it out.
No, you're good. You're good.
But yeah,
That's
no.
what
So
it's-
really, this is about like the immersive design and talking about through those things. My contribution is just talking about like our events crowd and bringing in different people who don't usually go to see theater, but they're hungering for ways to get out of their house and have new experiences with their friends. And that's kind of like been my mission with After Hours, is building theater for those kind of people, because they're out there and they're spending a lot of money and doing a lot of fun things with fun people, but they're not going to go see theater often. And so how do we really hook into that drive for experience, but then still give them great culture with theater?
Okay, so but how are you measuring if you're transforming them or not, right? So like Graham mentioned like the folks who are like set up in their ready to go out clubbing clothes,
Right.
show for the matinee. How do you track whether that person then becomes a theater goer?
I mean, I don't know if that's my goal, is to transition them into a theater goer, but to give them a great night that they could still talk about for months, days, hopefully years to come. Because that's not necessarily my goal. It's like I don't want to build more theater goers. I just want to fill our cup with more experienced oneers.
Fair.
Oh wait, no, you go.
Oh no, I would say that I do think I want to. This is why we're a good team.
Yeah.
Is that we all have slightly different.
Screw the theater goers, says KJ.
But I think
Graham's like, no, I want to make more of them. No, Graham, just pick it up wherever you left off, where I said, oh no, it just stopped. So, Graham, we just had a little snafu, but like, you were grabbing the mic literally from KJ.
It's only two mics. That sounds very dramatic. I'm like jumping in front of the mic. No. I think KJ's perspective is very valid and definitely part of the ethos. But I think for me, developing new and more diverse and more broad audiences for theater in LA is sort of my reason for doing all of this. And I'm not so precious in terms of what the definition of theater is. I think immersive definitely, fits into that in these hybrid experiences. But I want to create, I want to help turn LA into more of a theater going and narrative events going culture. Like,
I like narrative events. That's
right.
interesting.
Well, you have London and New York and cities that are most often associated with theater. They've been around for hundreds of years prior to the beginnings of television and film and radio and things of that sort. And we haven't. And
we're a lot more associated with television
Yeah.
and movies.
And geographically much more spread out. And
Yeah.
so how do we develop a really strong live events and arts going culture? And I think hopefully an event like this is perhaps my hypothesis for one model of what that can be. And hopefully I mean being for all of After Hours.
Well, I think something that, going back to KJ, what you talk about a lot is like, we all have theater backgrounds. We're all theater kids here. And it's always been really hard to get people to see our shows. Like, the theater community can feel small sometimes. Sometimes you feel like, the audience is smaller because we're kind of
cannibalizing
our own ticket sales. But then, or people complain about prices, like, like $60 is such an expensive ticket to see the show.
Because we're all broke, because it's a bunch of theater artists.
Exactly,
each other's theater shows. Everyone's broke. Yeah,
right. But then you won't bat an eye at paying hundreds of dollars to go to Coachella. You don't you pay so much money to see Taylor Swift in concert. Like, so basically, what you talk about.
What you pay in Ticketmaster fees is what
what
you'd be paying to see the show.
Yeah,
right?
one ticket. Yeah. So how do we get those type of people to feel like the same worth is appropriate to a theater show? Like that. So of course they're going to spend all this money on a music festival, but then why wouldn't they come to something that is equally or even more rewarding?
Well, and this is just my business brain talking, but like my thing with that is that's not a, pricing is never a price problem. It's always a value problem. People don't necessarily see the value of going out to see a theater show some nights, which is unfortunate because theater has a lot to give to the community, to arts, to people, just on a holistic level. But they will go see Taylor Swift because they see the value in seeing Taylor Swift in concert.
Or to go see the opera. I mean, I was looking at, they were doing some of the Ring Cycle, I think, or something here in town, and I was like, oh, I should finally check that out. And I saw the ticket prices, and I was like, my God. And just all live events, the tickets are so increasingly inflated.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's not that for Taylor Swift, you could say they're very inflated. But like, even for this, it's like, we're doing our best to make it accessible, but costs are still what they are, to put on beautiful live events. But that being said, is that by tapping into an events crowd, it's a crowd that doesn't necessarily go to see theater. We're not cannibalizing our own. We're hopefully expanding that audience.
Yeah, I think it's about not cannibalizing the existing theater crowd, inviting the existing theater crowd to see the show, but bringing in the new events crowd.
Right. And so I think, there's an earlier point in this conversation where it's like, even when we sell our show, we say, hey, come see our show. Like, you'll get shipwrecked on an island. You'll have some wonderful cocktails. You'll, discover puzzles and uncover the secrets. And by the way, there just happens to be Shakespeare here too. Yeah. And
a world-class piece of Shakespeare.
And a world-class piece of Shakespeare.
Shakespearean actors in America.
My gosh, yeah. But what's interesting about this one versus like Cuckoo's Nest is, you're not necessarily coming for the Shakespeare, but you're staying for it. And people actually turn out to be loving it, because we can read all the reviews that reviewers are saying about this show. And a lot of them are just absolutely adoring the actors.
You're not talking about,
Shakespeare.
you're saying like the Fever.
Right, yeah. No, because Fever asks every customer that buys a ticket, what do they thought of the show? And they ask them for like an actual written review. And so a lot of these written reviews are like, I came for the puzzles and the cocktails, but I stayed for the Shakespeare and I loved it. So which is really cool to see.
That's awesome. Well, I believe they need us to move, so it's a perfect chance, a great note to end on. Yeah. KJ, thank you for jumping in. Graham and Sara, thank you both for holding down the fort here in the Hollow. And now we got to go let the technicians do what they do.
Oh, there's the Tempest sound.
Oh, I think there's a storm coming.
The music. Good. Once again, I want to thank KJ, Sara, and Graham for being our guests on the show. Check the show notes to see how you can see The Tempest, an immersive experience currently at the Shakespeare Center of Los Angeles. Well, we dumped a whole lot of news at you at the start of the episode. All of those announcements of the new speakers. The summit's really shaping up this year, and we were talking with folks for quite some time, and finally got around to the point where we could announce. And I am very stoked that we have Moment Factory in the mix, that we have Riot Games in the mix, and I want to dwell on that one for just another second, because, if you are in, say, just in the theater world and you don't engage with gaming, or maybe you're in themed entertainment and you don't engage with gaming, you might not know just how big Riot Games is. So when this became a possibility, I just, aside from being, into what happened with Arcane, both the live show that was done in conjunction with Secret Cinema and with the Netflix series, which is just a beautiful piece of animation if you haven't seen it. Up until that point, I knew Riot, I knew League of Legends, I knew how popular they were. I knew that when they do their big annual esport championship rounds, that they often debut brand new songs with elaborate music videos, and those songs go on to become incredibly popular and can help launch people's music careers. Already from the old transmedia standpoint, it's just an incredible company in terms of the level of cultural impact they are able to make beyond their core gaming offerings, and that they went into the immersive space at all, that they hired Wendy coming out of Disney Imagineering, coming off of working on Galactic Star Cruiser, of being the head of live entertainment for Star Cruiser, and bringing her over to have the role of the director of IP management. I want to get the title right, so I check my notes right there. That they're operating in this way is fascinating to me, and is this really fantastic sign that the kind of thing we've been talking about for a long time, where people with theater backgrounds, people with themed entertainment backgrounds, or theater people who get themed entertainment backgrounds, because Wendy's a director, right? This pathway through that world into this bigger, it's not that theater isn't big, but into these sort of Titanic level intellectual properties, these story worlds that millions of people engage with around the planet, that you can see someone's pathway, and that's opening up doors for all kinds of artists, all kinds of creators and producers to play in this space. It just makes me so excited. It makes me so thankful that we get to see these arcs play out, and that we get to show what is on the minds of these creatives, of these executives, of these companies, as they're looking at immersive as a place to expand. And in an entirely different way, what's going on with Plato Learning, with summer camps, with bringing immersive. I taught summer camp. I taught Shakespeare summer camp for a couple of years. Some of the favorite summers of my life were getting to stage Shakespearean plays with both kids and teenagers. You haven't lived till you watched small children do Julius Caesar. It's just delightful, hilarious in the extreme, and also just a joy in and of itself. And to know that there's folks out there who are taking what's being developed, who are walking down the same pathways that the folks in the immersive creative scene are, but doing it for education. That's incredibly exciting. That's incredibly fascinating. And of course, we are gaga about Moment Factory and everything they do and all the places that they do it. And, we've already had initial talks with Thomas, who is very excited about sort of the 3 pillars we've lined out this year. And we're going to talk some more next week about the shape of the show, because people are coming and say, well, what's the schedule going to be like? And what's this and what's that? And so we're going to get down more into that next week, both in terms of what we're blasting out, and also I'll probably talk about it more here at the back end of the podcast. But really, as always, the whole point of this, it isn't just to like, send a bunch of information at everyone. It's to get everybody in the same room and get folks talking. So you're going to hear a lot about that when we start breaking down the salons, when we start talking about what town hall is going to be about. So much of the time at the next stage isn't just about hearing from these incredible speakers, listening to interesting panels, or going to the workshops. A lot of the time is spent in small groups, talking together, talking with the folks on those panels. There's only 200 badges that get sold or given away. There's, about another 100 people total between the people working behind the scenes, the speakers, and a couple other invited guests who are going to be there. But this is a very participatory event, and it is intimate, and we keep it going that way for the entire length of the run. So if you've been sitting on the fence, you've been wondering, you've been like, well, I don't know, just know there's a few more big things that are getting the deals being finalized on. And I'm hoping that in the next week or so, we're going to be able to start talking about some of those. And there's also actually a bunch of stuff that's in the chute that honestly, we just don't have the headshots for people yet. But also, there's some folks we've announced we're going to start explaining in what capacity it's all going to kind of work together. And I'm just excited to bring you all through. And I hope to see you there. We've only got 2 months to go. So if you've been thinking about it, just, trust me, or talk to the people who've been to the events we've run before. That's the surest sign. There's a lot of people who love what we do. So come on down. All right. Enough of that. There's something else on the level of getting everybody together. And you'll see this one kind of breaking wide, maybe even when this drops or over the weekend, or if nothing else on Monday. I'm just waiting on, again, some links to come my way. We're teaming up with the Themed Entertainment Association. This is put together by Brett Jackson of Imagi-Ne'er-Do-Wells. We're teaming up. There's going to be a TEA meets Immersive Experience Institute and our wonderful community of creators event happening here in Los Angeles. It's going to be on the last Thursday of the month. If it's not in the show notes, then keep an eye out in the newsletter and early next week for more information about it. This is going to be another great opportunity to get folks together and for the themed entertainment folks to meet the immersive folks and sort of kick off the season and get things rocking and rolling. It's time to start bringing everybody back together on the regular, both on the local level and wider. And keep an eye out. I know the New York team is putting together the next New York meetup in not too long. I think they're going to get something up in May. I get to sit on those emails and watch that take shape in front of my eyes. All right. All of that. So much more. Many things to come. This has been the show. I'm going to do the credits. The associate producer of No Proscenium is Parker Sella. Music for No Proscenium is by Chris Porter of the Speakeasy Society and Solar the Podcast. I got to see Chris this week. It was good. It's been a while. Special thanks to Siobhan O'Loughlin for voicing our intro. And this podcast is written, edited, hosted, produced, blah, 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 by yours truly. I'm Noah Nelson. And until next time, I'll see you at the show. I'm recording just for legal purposes. I have to tell you guys I'm recording, and I've got the levels, and I'm gonna. So how do you say your last name again? Because I always mess it up.
Beil.
Beil.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jessica
And Wetterhahn,
Like,
just
like
for
Wetterhahn. I know that.
Wetterhahn.
Knies.
I just want to make sure I don't say Belly because I think I did that once. So
Sara Beil.
yeah, Sara Belly. It's Beil. Like Jessica Biel. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
Yeah, it's the easiest way to remember it. Although that's a stretch now. Like Gen Zers don't know. Like it's like you could like show the entire like One Tree Hill cast to like Gen Zers. It's like Gen Zers don't know this one trick. Zennials don't know who. So anyway,
Seventh Heaven.
yeah, Seventh Heaven. Was Seventh Heaven not One Tree Hill? Is that what you're? I can't remember.
Was she in both?
No. Maybe you're right because I stopped after Dawson's Creek. Like I wasn't watching.
I think
the
she was on Seventh.
I wasn't
Heaven.
watching WB anymore. And I think
She
you're
was
right.
the oldest sister on
Because
Seventh
Heaven was the super religious one, and then like she was in Maxim, and that caused a scandal. You are correct.
Oh,
Yes.
And Leo also started in that one too.
Wait, Leo?
DiCaprio.
No. DiCaprio wasn't in Seventh Heaven. DiCaprio was on Growing Pains. It was, and then what you're thinking of is the fact that Kirk Cameron is like is a super right wing Christian who appears in all the Left Behind movies.
You're right.
This is the best back matter we've ever had.
The backstory of Jessica Biel.
Yeah.
I mean, if
That's when
she
was dating Justin Timberlake at the time.
she's
right?
married to Justin Timberlake.
Oh, she's married to
yeah,
Timberlake.
has
Been for
kids,
a
yeah.
decade.
Really? Oh wow.
KJ is a huge Justin
Yeah,
Timberlake
if you
fan.
wanna
If you
get
want some
hot takes
JT.
on JT and JB.
JT and JB.
Justin
You-
Timberlake
you,
T.
You go to KJ for JT and JB. JTT.
Yeah.
No, JTT is Justin.
Jonathan Taylor
Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, hi guys, welcome to Millennial Television Hour. Here, we have with us. I might leave this. This is the best. This may go in. All right, we are sitting on the. Okay, we're just gonna have the laughs. We're sitting on the stage of. We are here at the Shakespeare Center of Los Angeles.